Okay, so you want to buy a yacht. You can already see it. White hull, clean as a bar of soap, sitting at anchor in some impossibly blue Mediterranean cove. It's early evening. The teak deck is still warm under your bare feet. Somebody hands you a cold drink you didn't have to make, and a stewardess in a crisp polo asks if you'd like dinner served on the aft deck or up on the sun deck tonight. The tender's tied off at the stern, ready to run you into town whenever you feel like it. Your phone has no signal and you don't care. The engines are off. The only sound is water against the hull and ice against glass. This is freedom you can park. Freedom with a swim platform. You worked your whole life, and now the horizon is a thing you own a piece of. That's the picture. That's the exact picture the brokerage listing sells you, the one in the drone footage at the Monaco Yacht Show, the one in every watch ad and every movie about people richer than you. Here's the problem. Almost none of that image is where the money goes. The drink, the cove, the sunset, those are free. Everything holding them up is not. What they don't show you in the drone shot is the diesel bill that can run into the thousands of dollars for a single afternoon, the crew payroll that never stops whether you're aboard or not, the shipyard invoice that arrives like clockwork every winter, the insurance, the dockage, the flag, the surveys, the paint job that costs more than most people's homes. They show you the boat. They hide the building. Because that's what it really is. A yacht is not really a boat. It is not really a vehicle. It's a floating luxury building, a private hotel with a payroll and an engine that happens to occasionally move. And like every building, it costs you the most not when you're using it, but when you're just standing there keeping it alive. Read that again. Because that single idea is the whole video. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly where every dollar goes on a yacht, what it actually costs to buy one, the hidden costs nobody puts in the brochure, the one counterintuitive mechanism that makes this asset behave completely differently from a house or a car, how the smart owners actually turn it into something other than a hole in the water, the specific risk that can vaporize the entire thing overnight, and why, despite all of it, the wealthiest people on Earth keep buying them. Anyway, and you'll understand why one of these boats can cost a government $1 million a month just to sit still. Now, before we talk about money, we need to talk about what a yacht actually is. Because the word is doing a lot of hiding. When you say yacht, you might mean 5 completely different products that share almost nothing but the shape. Some are toys. Some are transport. And some are institutions. At the bottom you've got the day boat and the weekender, a 30 to 50-foot cruiser from a builder like Azimut or Beneteau. You trailer it or you keep it in a slip. You drive it yourself on weekends, and it behaves, economically, like a second car with a drinking problem. Then you step up to the 60 to 80-foot range. Now you probably need a captain, at least part-time, and the boat starts behaving less like a car and more like a small apartment you have to maintain. Then you cross a specific, real line. In the industry, once a vessel hits 24 meters, that's about 79 feet, it's legally treated as a large yacht, subject to a whole separate rulebook, the kind maintained by bodies like the UK's Maritime and Coast Guard Agency under what's called the Large Yacht Code. That's where the word superyacht starts. And above roughly 100 meters, insiders start whispering the word gigayacht, the Eclipses and the Azams of the world, floating city-states built by Lursen and Fedship for a few dozen people on the planet. Here's the thing. Those are not the same business scaled up. They are secretly different businesses. A weekender is a hobby. A superyacht is an enterprise. It has employees, a legal domicile, a corporate owner, and a budget bigger than most small companies. Financially, jumping from an 80-footer to a 50-meter isn't buying a bigger boat. It's founding a company whose only product is your own comfort. For the rest of this, we're going to focus on that superyacht, the 30-meter and up world, because that's where the economics get genuinely strange, and where almost every myth about owning a yacht quietly falls apart. So let's start with the number everyone fixates on, the sticker price. A brand new superyacht in the 30 to 40-meter range from a respected production builder, think Ferretti Group, Benetti, San Lorenzo, will generally run you somewhere from about $10 to $30 million. Push into the 50 to 60-meter custom range from a top yard, and you're talking 40, 60, 100 million and up. Cross into the true giants, the 100-meter plus custom builds from Lursen or Oshenko, The kind Jeff Bezos took delivery of with his sailing yacht Kourou in 2023, and the price tags climbed past $500 million. The most expensive in the world are quoted, credibly or not, in the hundreds of millions. And you can, of course, buy used. The brokerage market run by houses like Fraser, Burgess, and Northrop & Johnson is enormous, and a 10-year-old 40-meter can sell for a fraction of its new price. Which sounds like a bargain. Here's the trap. Price and cost are two completely different numbers, and on a yacht the gap between them is a canyon. The purchase price is the entry ticket. It is not the cost of the ride. In fact, on a yacht, the purchase price is very often the smallest number you'll ever deal with over the life of ownership. Let that land for a moment. The thing that made you gasp in the listing, the $25 million, might be the cheap part. Because now we get to the costs nobody budgets for. The ones that live underneath the boat, in the parts of the spreadsheet the broker never emails you. First, dockage. Your yacht has to sleep somewhere, and prime berths are savagely expensive. A premium marina berth in a place like Port Hercules in Monaco, especially in season, can run tens of thousands of euros for a single week, and holding a permanent large berth in the world's most desirable harbors can cost hundreds of thousands a year. You are, in effect, renting a very small, very wet piece of the most expensive real estate on the planet. And you can't just park it anywhere. A 50-meter boat needs a berth built for a 50-meter boat, and there are only so many. Second, the yard period. Every year, sometimes twice a year, that yacht comes out of the water or goes alongside for what's called a refit and haul out, hull cleaning, anti-fouling paint, engine servicing, systems checks, the works. A routine annual yard period on a mid-size superyacht can easily run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And every 5 years or so, class rules, enforced by classification societies like Lloyd's Register or DNV, the organizations that certify a vessel is seaworthy, require a major survey. A big 5-year refit and repaint on a larger yacht can cost several $1 million. One paint job. Several million. The gloss you see in the photos is not decoration. It's a recurring capital expense. Third, the toys and the tenders. Nobody buys a superyacht to sit on it. So you need the tender, the smaller powerboat that ferries people to shore, and often a second one. You need jet skis, diving gear, sometimes a submarine, increasingly a helipad, and the aviation costs that come with it. The toy garage on a modern yacht is a 6-figure line item all by itself, and it depreciates and breaks just like everything else that touches saltwater. Fourth, the invisible legal machine. Your yacht needs a flag. It has to be registered to a country, and superyachts overwhelmingly fly what are called flags of convenience: the Cayman Islands, the Marshall Islands, Malta. It needs to be owned, almost always, not by you personally but by a company, a special-purpose vehicle, usually set up somewhere like the Caymans or the British Virgin Islands, that exists for exactly one reason: to hold this one boat. That's lawyers, that's accountants, that's annual filings, that's compliance. Before a single guest steps aboard, before a single bottle is uncorked, you are already running a small international corporation. So, sticker price, then dockage, then yard, then toys, then a legal shell company. And we still haven't turned the engines on. Which brings us to the single most important idea in this entire video. The counterintuitive mechanism. Slow down here, because this is the one that recontextualizes everything. You would assume a yacht costs you money when you use it. Fuel, food, wear and tear, logical, right? You'd think the expensive days are the days you're out cruising. It's the opposite. A yacht costs you the most when you don't use it. Here's why. Roughly 80 to 90% of what a yacht costs every year is fixed. The crew get paid whether you're aboard or in your office 1,000 miles away. The berth gets billed whether you visit or not. The insurance renews. The yard period comes regardless. The company filings are due. That great industry rule of thumb you'll hear from every broker and captain, that a yacht costs about 10% of its purchase price every single year just to run, that 10% is mostly fixed cost. So a $20 million yacht burns through roughly $2 million a year. A $100 million yacht, around $10 million a year. Every year. Forever. Whether it moves or not. That's not a vehicle. That's a subscription with a hull. So the enemy of a yacht owner is not fuel. It's not even the ocean. The enemy is idle time. Every day that boat sits at anchor with nobody aboard, it is not saving you money. It is bleeding at nearly full rate for zero enjoyment and zero return. And the average private owner uses their superyacht only a few weeks a year. Do the math. You are paying, in effect, tens of thousands of dollars per day of actual use, because you're financing all the empty days in between. Once you understand that the whole economic problem of a yacht is idle time, everything the smart owners do suddenly makes sense. Because their entire strategy is built around one question: how do I stop this thing from sitting empty? Which leads us to how money actually comes back in. Because it can. Let's break the revenue side into layers. Layer 1 is charter. This is the big one. You rent your yacht out to other people when you're not using it, and the charter market is real money. A well-run 50-meter yacht can command charter rates from roughly $150,000 to over €500,000 per week in peak season, booked through brokers under standardized contracts like the ones set by MYBA, the Mediterranean Yacht Brokers Association. On top of the base rate, the charter guest pays what's called the APA, the Advanced Provisioning Allowance, typically around 30% of the charter fee, which covers fuel, food, dockage, and drinks for their trip. Translation: when someone else charters your boat, they pay to run it. Your fixed costs get covered by a stranger's vacation. Layer 2 is the tax and structure game, and this is where it gets interesting. If you register your yacht as a commercial vessel, genuinely available for charter, you unlock a completely different tax treatment in many jurisdictions. You may be able to reclaim VAT, the value-added tax that in Europe can run 20% or more of the boat's value. You can run the whole thing through that corporate shell as a business with revenue, expenses, and in some cases depreciation write-offs. Countries like France and Italy have run specific yacht leasing and commercial exemption schemes over the years precisely because this floating economy employs a lot of people. So the same boat, structured as a private toy, is a pure money pit, but structured as a commercial charter asset, it becomes a business that offsets its own existence. Layer 3 is the one nobody advertises, the boat as a business tool. For a certain kind of owner, the founder, the dealmaker, the yacht isn't leisure. It's the world's most exclusive conference room. It's where the deal gets signed, where the client gets courted, where the brand gets built. That value never shows up on the boat's own P&L, but it's real, and it's often the actual justification. And Layer 4, the rarest one, appreciation. Almost all yachts depreciate, hard, like a car driven off the lot into the sea. But a tiny handful of legendary, historically significant, or impossibly scarce builds can hold or even gain value, especially the true one-of-one masterpieces from the greatest yards. That's the exception. Do not plan your life around it. Now, the recurring bleed. The operating costs. Let's actually walk the monthly and yearly bill on, say, a 50-meter superyacht. Crew first, because crew is usually the single biggest line. A yacht that size carries maybe 10 to 14 full-time crew, captain, officers, engineers, deckhands, chef, stewardesses. A qualified superyacht captain can earn well into six figures, often $150,000 to $300,000 a year or more on larger vessels, and once you add every other salary, plus food, uniforms, training, travel, and rotation, total crew cost on a 50-meter can run $1 to $2 million a year all by itself. Your boat is, functionally, a payroll that floats. Then fuel. Big yachts drink. A large motor yacht underway can burn anywhere from a few hundred to well over 1,000 liters of diesel per hour depending on speed and size. At cruising speed, a single long passage can post a 5-figure fuel bill. Slow down and it drops fast, which is exactly why these boats spend so much time gently idling at anchor. Then maintenance in the yard, which we covered, call it several $100,000 a year in routine work, spiking into the millions in a major refit year. Then insurance, hull and machinery cover plus liability, generally running a meaningful fraction of a percent to over 1% of the boat's insured value annually, so tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands a year. Then dockage. Then the shoreside management company that actually administers all of this, because you're not personally processing crew payroll from your phone. Add it all up and you land right back on that 10% rule. The boat costs, every year, about a tenth of what you paid for it, just to keep breathing. So far, so brutal. But now we have to talk about the thing that can take all of it to zero. Risk and volatility. Because a yacht doesn't just bleed slowly. It can also die suddenly. There are 3 ways the whole model breaks. The first is the cycle. Yachts are the most discretionary purchase on Earth, which means their value and their charter demand are violently tied to the economy of the ultra-wealthy. When markets crash, the brokerage market floods with boats and prices fall off a cliff. That's exactly what happened after 2008, when values on many used yachts dropped 30, 40, even 50% and boats sat unsold for years. The second is physical. This is the ocean. Fire, grounding, flooding, storms, and unlike a house, your asset can literally sink and become a total loss in an afternoon. In 2024, the sailing yacht Bayesian, a 56-meter built by the legendary Italian yacht Perini Navi and owned by the British tech entrepreneur Mike Lynch, went down in a sudden violent storm off Sicily with tragic loss of life. A vessel worth tens of millions, gone in minutes. The sea does not check your net worth. And the third risk is the one that's purely human, and it sets up our case study. The boat can be taken from you. And when it is, you learn the deepest truth about this asset in the most expensive way possible. Here's where it gets interesting. In the spring of 2022, in the harbor of Lautoka, Fiji, sat a gleaming 106-meter superyacht called the Amadea. Built by the German master yard Lürssen and delivered in 2017, the Amadea is one of the more spectacular vessels afloat, reportedly valued in the range of $300 million. It had everything the fantasy promises: a pool, a helipad, a spa, room for dozens of crew and guests. This was the top of the mountain. The absolute realized version of, you want to own a yacht. Then the geopolitics came. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Western governments began seizing assets linked to sanctioned Russian oligarchs, and U.S. authorities moved on the Amadea, alleging ties to a sanctioned billionaire. In May 2022, they seized it and sailed it to the United States. And here is the lesson, and it's the whole video in one true story. The U.S. government now owned a $300 million superyacht. And it turned into a nightmare. Because remember the mechanism, a yacht costs the most when it just sits. Court filings and reporting revealed that maintaining the seized Amadea, the crew you still have to pay, the fuel to keep systems running, the insurance, the dockage, the upkeep, was costing American taxpayers on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, with total figures running toward tens of millions of dollars. The government literally went to court arguing it needed to sell the boat because it couldn't afford to keep it idle. Sit with that. The most powerful government on Earth seized a trophy asset, and the trophy immediately started eating them alive at $1 million a month, doing nothing, going nowhere. Not because they were using it. Because they weren't. The rise, a flawless symbol of ultimate wealth. The decline, overnight, a legal and financial liability nobody wanted. The lesson, a superyacht is not an asset that sits quietly on a balance sheet. It is a live animal that has to be fed every single day, and it does not care who holds the leash. That's not a boat. That's an obligation with a paint job. So why, knowing all of this, do the smartest, richest people on the planet keep buying them? Are they just fools with too much money? No. And this is the deeper game. Because the sophisticated owner isn't trying to win the way you'd win with a rental property. They already know they will not make money on the boat itself. They've reframed the entire problem. First, they never own it naked. The boat lives inside that corporate structure, commercially registered, VAT reclaimed, chartered enough to legitimately offset a big chunk of its running costs and to keep the taxman satisfied. Their effective annual cost after charter income and tax treatment might be a fraction of the sticker 10%. They've turned a money pit into a heavily subsidized one. Second, they understand what they're actually buying, and it isn't transportation. It's time, privacy, and access, a totally secure, totally private floating estate that can wake up in Monaco and go to sleep in Sardinia, that no paparazzi can reach, where the most important people in their world can be assembled for a week with nowhere else to be. For a certain tier of person, that access is worth more than the burn. The boat is the cost of admission to a room that doesn't otherwise exist. And third, and this is the quiet truth, they have made peace with the fact that this is consumption, not investment. The wealthiest yacht owners aren't trying to grow this money. They're spending it, deliberately, The way you'd spend on the best vacation of your life, just at a scale where $1 million a month is a rounding error against the joy and the utility. Some own to charter. Some own to entertain and to close deals. And some own simply because they can, and because at their altitude, the depreciation is invisible. They're not trying to win the boat. They're trying to lose slowly, comfortably, and on their own terms. So let's put real numbers on it and land this plane. 2 scenarios. Same 40-meter yacht, bought for $25 million, run through a proper commercial charter structure. The good year. The economy is strong, the Mediterranean season is booked solid. You charter the boat for 14 weeks at an average of €200,000 a week. That's roughly $2.8 million in charter revenue, with guests covering fuel and provisioning on top through the APA. Your running costs land around $2.5 million. Between the charter income and the tax and VAT advantages of the commercial structure, your out-of-pocket cost for the year drops to a few $100,000, and you personally used the boat for 6 glorious weeks. On a per-week basis, you had the vacation of a lifetime for a manageable fraction of the headline cost. The boat nearly carried itself. The bad year. Recession hits. Charter demand evaporates. You book 3 weeks instead of 14. Meanwhile, the costs don't care. Crew still paid, berth still due, and this happens to be your 5-year survey year, so the yard hands you a $3 million refit and repaint bill on top of everything. Your charter revenue barely dents it. You're out $4, $5, $6 million in a single year for a boat you stepped aboard twice. And if you try to sell to escape it, the brokerage market is flooded, and that $25 million yacht now fetches 15. You don't just lose the running costs. You lose the asset value on the way out the door. Same boat. Same slip. The difference between those 2 years isn't the yacht. It's everything around the yacht, the market, the structure, the timing, the idle days. So think back to that opening image. The teak deck, the cold drink, the impossible blue of the cove, the engine's quiet. That picture is completely real. Every wealthy owner gets exactly that evening. But now you know what's holding it up. The payroll asleep in the crew quarters below you, the shell company filing paperwork in the Caymans, the yard invoice already forming for the winter, the insurance ticking, the diesel gauge, and the quiet mathematical fact that this beautiful still moment is costing more per hour precisely because it's still. The yacht was never really the thing you were buying. The white hull and the sunset, that's the surface. That was never the business. The stillness isn't the reward. The stillness is the cost. And the water you thought you owned a piece of, that was always just renting you back your own horizon, by the day, for the rest of your life. The boat isn't really the thing you own. The bill is.